The story begins on a Monday morning. Mild sunbirds not even bothered to chirp yet, and Ms. Ernestine, Louise Washington, age 76, widowed, a loyal fan of the show. Judge Judy was simply heading to the train station to attend the memorial of her late husband's cousin's ex-wife's brother. An unmissable event. She had nothing but time and a bag of ripe bananas. 5 of them, each carefully selected at the market the evening before. She said flat out, "I don't trust bananas sold in train stations. You eat one and next thing you know, you're meeting the Lord instead of your relatives." She wore an old purple floral dress she called her diplomatic gown, flip-flops that squeaked with every step, and dragged a suitcase as colorful as a Rio street parade. In her bag, a train ticket ID card, blood pressure medication, and a small photo of her late husband who always said, "If trouble finds you, yell first, ask later." But this time she didn't need to yell. Everything was just getting started. A white cop, face pink, like he'd shaved that morning with a razor blade, jaw clenched with excess pride, stood blocking the ticket gate like he was guarding the president. On his shoulder a badge, in his hand half a spilled coffee, and in his eyes a look reserved specifically for black people. As Ms. Ernestine approached ticket in hand, giving a polite nod, he frowned. "Where do you think you're going?" She blinked. "I'm catching a train to Montgomery Family Memorial." "Not a protest, officer." The officer squinted at the bag of bananas, then at her, then back at the bananas. "You're carrying food, unpeeled fruit, not cleared by security." She blinked. "Are you asking if my bananas have a permit? National security is no joking matter, ma'am." People walking by started to slow down. A few pulled out their phones, and Mrs. Ernestine, like the lead character in a movie she never auditioned for, stood up straight, tilted her head, and replied, "Young man, I've lived through 3 presidents, 2 recessions, and one time Walmart ran out of fish sauce, but I've never seen anyone scared of bananas like you." And just like that, the stage was set. But instead of a train ticket, she was handed a ticket for special security screening. "You appear to be moving somewhat unusually," Officer Barkley said, hand resting on his gun belt, like he was about to apprehend a federal fugitive, not an elderly woman with a left knee replacement from last year. "Unusual," she replied. "I do limp, but that's from disco dancing in '78, not terrorism." But Barkley didn't laugh. He tilted his head, staring at her like he was scanning a QR code printed on her forehead. A nearby passenger, a young white woman in a Starbucks hoodie, quietly muttered, she's literally just standing." But Barkley had made up his mind. "We'll need to search your bag. This is a random procedure." "Random, my foot." Mrs. B sighed. "If I were as white as that shirt you're wearing, I'd be on the train by now." People began to gather. Some took out their phones. Others pointed. Some silently wondered, "Wait, what's going on? Is this a hostage situation?" No, just an old woman and an officer and a bag of bananas. And so the stage was set. The script of discrimination began. Through a story no one would have believed if it hadn't happened. 6:42 a.m. Ms. Alberta hadn't even had another sip of coffee when from a distance the steady beat of shoes hitting the station floor echoed like war drums. A tall, heavy-set white officer was approaching. Beyond reason, he appeared as if about to bust a drug cartel, not inspect an elderly passenger with a bag of fruit. "Hey, you!" he shouted as if Ms. Alberta had just escaped from prison. "Stop right there. Do you have ID?" Ms. Alberta blinked, turned her head slowly, like the main character in a Western movie, then gently lifted her bag of bananas. "Young officer, are you here to check my ID or how ripe my bananas are?" Nearby passengers started to take notice. Some stifled laughter. Others pulled out their phones because nowadays nothing spreads faster than a white cop yelling at an elderly black woman holding bananas. The officer's name was probably Chad. His badge read C. Bradderson, but his whole demeanor screamed classic Chad. He widened his eyes. "You're disturbing the peace, standing in a restricted area and refusing to comply, Miss." Alberta tilted her head, calmly replied, "The restricted area is the train bench." "Then I guess that welcome sign over there is lying." "Officer Chad," a young passenger whispered. "She sounds like a character straight out of How to Get Away with Injustice." But Chad didn't take kindly to being answered with articulate words, especially when they were polite, grammatically correct, and came from a black woman. To him, that was suspicious behavior, defiant attitude, noted in the report, and just like that, the banana bag still intact was officially deemed evidence. Ms. Alberta let out a wry chuckle, slowly adjusted her wide-brimmed hat. "Officer, go ahead and take notes. I've lived through Jim Crow Watergate and 3 seasons of The Bachelor. Your little games don't scare me." Ms. Mavis sat down on a cold metal bench, as cold as the officer's face earlier, still clutching her bag of bananas like it was her crown of justice. No one said a word. Security staff huddled a few meters away, whispering among themselves, occasionally glancing at her as though she were plotting to bomb the station with fruit. A young white officer with a buzz cut, shoulders wider than his, reasoning, stepped up. "Ma'am, we've determined your bag contains items of unknown origin." Mavis looked up, raised an eyebrow. "They're bananas, grown in Alabama, more traceable than most of you." No one laughed, except for the 2 young black college students nearby who were live-streaming it all on Instagram. "What are you guys planning to do?" "Run a DNA test on the fruit." The officer tightened his expression. "You've been recorded failing to comply with instructions to step aside and displaying provocative behavior that may constitute obstruction of an officer. And I've recorded that you're trying to frame an elderly woman who bought a ticket home as a threat to society. So who's really obstructing common sense here, son?" Her voice remained gentle, her eyes still warm, but the atmosphere began to shift. A few passers-by slowed down. A young brown-skinned man pulled out his phone. An old man nodded quietly. No one in the waiting room could quite grasp what was happening. Mrs. Ernestine sat on the cold metal bench, hands neatly folded on her knees, banana bag beside her, and silence. A kind of silence, deeply unsettling to those used to following up hands where I can see them with swift action. Officer Chadwick, now joined by another colleague, whose face looked like he had just lost an argument with the dogs about politics, pointed at her and muttered, "She's employing passive resistance." "I can see it clearly." "Passive resistance," scoffed the janitor walking by. "She's eating a banana, my dude, not evading taxes." Chadwick nodded solemnly, as if just received classified intel. "Yes, it's the way she's peeling the banana. It's suggestive, deliberate C. She's not looking at anyone, not saying anything, but we all know she's making a statement." "No," the janitor replied. "I don't know anything. All I see is a tired, hungry elderly lady who's being harassed by a rookie cop who thinks he's starring in Training Day 2. You should let her go." But Chadwick couldn't, because by now he was in too deep. Too many eyes were watching. too many phones recording, and most importantly, too much ego packed into one uniform. He turned back to Mrs. Ernestine and said, "If you refuse to comply, I'll be forced to call in tactical support." She simply looked up, chewed the last bite of banana, then sighed. "You know what's scary?" she said, tired, but crystal clear. "Not the police officers. It's the police officers whose imagination is bigger than their conscience." Soft chuckles rippled through the crowd. Chadwick flushed red. An old woman, a bag of bananas, and an officer panicking because his authority no longer silenced the room like it used to. The loudspeaker crackled to life. "Westbound train arriving in 2 minutes." Mrs. Ernestine pointed at the electronic display. "How much longer you planning to hold me, son? Till these bananas sprout roots?" While Mrs. Odessa was silently telling herself, "I haven't broken any law unless having brown skin and ripe bananas counts." Officer Beckley returned this time, accompanied by a woman in a charcoal gray suit. She introduced herself as Chief Inspector of the Southeast North American Intermetropolitan Subway Regional Security Bureau. Yes, the title was as long as a DMV line, and the power that came with it was about the same. The ability to make things harder without reason. "Odessa Trumbull?" the woman asked, tapping on an iPad with Cold War-era intensity, as if digging through classified spy files. "That's me, unless you're looking for another Odessa with silver hair, a pink cardigan, and a bag of bananas in her purse." She smiled, lips slightly trembling from the cold. Or maybe anger. It was hard to tell. "You're under suspicion of displaying uncooperative behavior in a high-security area," the woman declared. "Just for asking why I'm being detained without cause," she shot back. Officer Beckley cut in, his voice suddenly philosophical. "You know, ma'am, cooperation isn't just about actions. It's about energy, spirit. And I'm sensing a kind of resistance energy from you." "Oh, that's probably from my badly brewed coffee this morning," Odessa replied. "My energy's just saying I want to go home and eat beef noodle soup." She was asked to open her purse again. The banana bag was taken out, turned left and right, like it was undergoing forensic analysis. One banana snapped in half during inspection. A national-level tragedy. She might be hiding a recording device or explosives inside, Beckley said, as if he were auditioning for Mission Impossible Senior Citizen Edition. Odessa looked at the scene before her and suddenly felt oddly at peace. Not because she was vindicated, but because she realized this was so absurd. It could only be real.
"Who do you think I am?"
James Banana. Meanwhile, Mrs. Ernestine sat curled up on a freezing plastic chair next to an out-of-service vending machine while Officer Chad was still diligently writing a report. No, not an arrest report. A vibe report. Subject appears to be moving suspiciously. Chad typed on his outdated iPad, eyes flicking to her worn sneakers. "I sensed something off from the way she was chewing gum." A young female officer nearby spoke up hesitantly. "Sir, she's just eating a banana." Chad didn't turn around. Bananas can be dangerous. Haven't you seen Minions? Those things are devious. Meanwhile, an Asian janitor quietly observed the scene, let out a soft sigh, then pulled out his phone to start recording, because he knew no camera, no justice. Mrs. Ernestine remained silent. She didn't sigh. She didn't argue. She just sat there, hands resting on a cloth tote embroidered with the words, "Black Don't Crack." Eyes locked on Officer Chad with a terrifying kind of patience. The kind of patience forged through Jim Crow, through witnessing too much, and knowing exactly when silence speaks louder than outrage. Outside the station, a light rain began to fall. Other passengers started to take notice. No one said a word, but the stares shifted from confused to questioning. A small boy asked his mother, "Mom, why are they doing that to her? Because she's living right, baby. Is that against the rules?" Around here, sometimes, yes. From Chad's shoulder radio came a new alert. A car theft in the parking lot. But he ignored it, because clearly nothing is more dangerous than an elderly black woman and a bag of bananas at a train station, and Mrs. Ernestine. She simply smiled as if she'd seen this moment coming all along, and as if she'd already prepared a closing act for the whole system, now watching her. While Mrs. Edna was still fumbling to gather the contents of her tote bag, scattered bananas, now bruised, and an old Bible. The door to the station creaked open. A breeze swept in, carrying a distinct scent. Justice, with a hint of mothballs and menthol balm. Clarence walked in, a tall black man, elderly but upright, even with a cane, wearing a pressed though aged suit, shoes polished so bright they could reflect the future. In one hand, a thick file. In his eyes, the sharpness of a veteran litigator. No one needed to ask who he was. Just one look at the white officer who had been accusing Mrs. Edna, now swallowing nervously, said it all. Who authorized the search of a 72-year-old woman simply because she was carrying bananas down a station hallway? Clarence asked, voice even not loud, but it made everything around him fall silent. I was just following procedure, the officer stammered. She just looked suspicious. Suspicious, Clarence echoed. Did she threaten anyone? No. Did she have a weapon on her? Just bananas. Bananas are weapons now. Or is it her skin color that's making you nervous? No further words were needed. The white officer at that moment was like a Ziploc bag being unzipped the wrong way, made a weird sound, then fell silent. Right. Then a group of passengers began gathering around. They weren't just filming anymore. They were nodding, whispering, and some even started speaking up. I got stopped once just for asking directions. My uncle got questioned just for wearing a hoodie at the station. It's like being black outside your house is breaking the law. A transit staff member walked over, hand trembling, holding out an offer. We sincerely apologize. Ms. Edna, you're welcome to a first-class train ticket with complimentary coffee. Ms. Edna narrowed her eyes at Clarence, then at the officer who was now sweating like undercooked black bean soup. I don't want coffee, she said slowly. I want the name of the person who called me suspicious, and I want an apology, not a coupon. Clarence smiled and gave a gentle nod. All eyes turned to the officer, and for the first time in his life, he did something he likely never imagined. I'm sorry, ma'am. There was no applause, no cinematic score, just the look in Edna's eyes, like she was saying, too late, but I hear you anyway, when Mrs. Dolores walked out of the interrogation room, her hair disheveled, one sandal missing, and her patients left behind. At the end of hallway 3, she had no idea she was stepping into an internet phenomenon. Because while Officer Rick Hendershot was shouting at full volume, "This is standard security procedure," a 16-year-old kid with an old phone had live-streamed the entire scene of Mrs. Dolores being questioned for carrying a bag of bananas and looking suspicious. The video was titled, "Cops Stop Elderly Black Woman Over Banana Bag. No, you didn't miss here." Within just 1 hour, the video had over 200,000 views. After 3 hours, it was on Twitter, TikTok, and even spawned a Reddit group. Justice for Nana. At the train station, when Dolores returned to the main hallway, she walked slowly holding a daisy-embroidered tote bag and wearing an expression of mild triumph, not because she enjoyed the attention, but because finally, the whispers of "this happens all the time" had become a collective voice. A group of black college students gathered outside the station entrance holding signs that read, "Black Elders Matter Too." A single mother from the Bronx, carrying her baby, shouted, "That could have been my mama." An elderly man in a wheelchair calmly munched on peanuts and muttered, "They once stopped me because I looked like I escaped from a nursing home. So now what?" Online headlines began popping up. Police interrogate elderly woman for carrying fruit. Is this system on a kindness-free diet? One banana. One protest. We don't need more laws. We need more conscience.
And Dolores.
When asked by a reporter how she felt, she simply shrugged. "I just wanted to catch the 9:42 train to church." Didn't expect to make national news over a banana and a question. But no one laughed, because people had seen too many. Like her, those who never got angry just quietly accepted being treated as if they don't belong here. It was 7:06 p.m. On the evening news of local channel WZAA, the anchor speaking with formal tone, but eyes struggling not to laugh, opened with, "A 74-year-old woman was subjected to a full-body security screening at Union Station for carrying too many bananas." The screen showed an image of Mrs. Ernestine wrapped in a purple scarf, one hand on her hip, with the expression of someone who had just been insulted by both Western civilization and the station's plumbing system. The story quickly spread across all platforms, from TV broadcasts to social media. It wasn't just about the old lady with the banana bag anymore. It became a symbol for anyone who'd ever been randomly searched, but always happened to have the same skin color. When interviewed by a CNN reporter, she answered calmly, "I wasn't trying to cause trouble. I was just trying to go home and fry up some bananas in butter." But apparently, in America, a black woman holding a banana is considered a national security threat. An internal investigation was launched. The officer, Sergeant Chadwick, was temporarily suspended and reassigned to training on how to interact with elderly African-American citizens. Public response was swift. Racial justice advocacy groups began circulating images of Mrs. Ernestine with hashtags like #Justice for Ernestine / banana not bomb. Folding chair is also a form of protest. 3 days later, a group of protesters brought folding chairs to the police station, sat silently, and handed out free bananas. And Mrs. Ernestine, she went home, opened her front door, sat in her old wooden kitchen chair, poured herself a cup of hot tea, and muttered, "Every time I try to mind my business, America invites me back in." She smiled, not because she was famous, but because she knew. This time she didn't stand alone. This time people had seen. And maybe next time, they won't need an old lady with a bag of bananas to finally pay attention.